Miami coaches are meeting with Houston transfer safety AJ Haulcy today. Here's why Haulcy could be the missing piece for Miami's defense.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about Jackson Cantwell's decision. 1 week away, in exactly 1 week, top prospect in America in the class of 2026, five-star offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell is going to make his announcement. Will it be Miami? Will it be Oregon, who he's visiting this weekend? Will it be Georgia? Will it be someone else? We'll talk about that and get a final scouting report from our guest today. Miami's got a bunch of visits coming up this week. Going to have some receivers coming in later on. Trebor Pena, Keelan Marion, Tony Johnson planning visits. But today, might be happening right now, Miami coaches are meeting with first-team All-Big 12 safety AJ Haulcy, as we want to bring in the man, the myth, the legend, Larry Blustein. So, Blue, AJ Haulcy, he checks off every box I can think of: the experience factor, proven talent, first team all Big 12 last year, graded out elite against the pass, 85 plus rating according to Pro Football Focus, good against the run as well at 73.5, an 80 overall grade. You're talking about a guy who can come to Miami and plug and play at safety, and he's got connections with a Miami coach. He was coached by Zach Etheridge at Houston, who's now one of Miami's DB's coaches. So I don't know, Blue, can you tell me anything that's wrong with AJ Haulcy? Because I don't see it.
No, there's not. Thanks for having us in. And this is obviously as big a week as you could get, obviously, with the NFL draft coming up. The portal still very much in play. High school football, especially in the state of Florida, will begin next Monday for their spring, for their 20 days of spring. And so, yeah, you get a guy like AJ Haulcy. He's a big body kid, little over 6 feet, 215, 220 pounds, ball hawk, 7 interceptions, stops the run. He's the type of guy with all that experience that you want on the field, especially with what Miami's doing to revamp the secondary by bringing in Brantley and bringing in POISED and bringing in a couple of other kids who could help from high school, and also returning with Brown and Williams and guys who've had some pretty good a couple of months. But yeah, getting a Haulcy will be huge. Like you said, he's familiar already with a coach. So that kind of like helps. He's, from what I understand, and a friend of mine who has watched him play numerous times says he's one of those dogs that, somebody like the new defensive coordinator, Heatherman's going to love, because he's a guy that goes after it. And as you said, he came up big in a pass-happy conference like the Big 12, and was awfully tough to pass against. Like I said, he comes up, supports the run real well. He's a very physical kid, and he would fit perfectly in what Miami's scheme is.
Yeah, he's a hitter, and you've probably watched him more than I have, but from what I've seen of Haulcy, you mentioned the run support, very strong tackler, very strong player. You mentioned 6 foot plus, 215 pounds plus, and the reason why, Blue, I refer to a player like this as a possible missing piece. We know Miami needs more at safety. Of course, they brought in a lot of defensive backs in the winter portal, mostly corners. I feel great about Zechariah Poiser at one of the safety spots. Miami also, of course, lost Zaquan Patterson into the transfer portal. So I see safety as a big position of need. And, Miami's been in conversations with, and they've hosted other safeties for visits. But the difference in a guy like Haulcy is he's a plug and play right now type of player, right? And there's nothing wrong with young guys who need development, nothing wrong with that. Like Noah King, who visited yesterday, has all of his collegiate eligibility. So, he's not necessarily a plug and play year one guy. Miami's been linked to Greg Smith out of Florida, who's in the transfer portal, but he's got 4 years of eligibility left. So he had a redshirt year last year. That's still a developmental guy, whereas AJ Haulcy is a ready for right now guy. So, Blue, do you feel if Miami can add a player like this, not saying the defense would be perfect because we're still potentially looking at defensive tackles and linebackers, but I think a guy like this, if Miami can get it done with Haulcy, I think is a missing piece that could take this defense to another level.
I agree. Especially coming in with the experience that he has, and have played at the college level for 32 games, and plus spring, and he's got all that experience. And like I said, the Big 12 comparable to any conference when it comes to producing athletes, and especially the passing game. And, like you have guys like Shedeur Sanders, and you had, somebody that the Miami Hurricanes faced, last year in the bowl game, another Big 12 team in Iowa State that threw the ball really well. So, yeah, I think if you have an opportunity to bring in somebody like this, who is a difference maker, and I think that the way that he looks at it as, he's going to be another cog in what Miami's doing to become a really viable secondary. And, if he looks back at any games last year, he'll understand the need that Miami has in that secondary. That's for sure.
Yes, indeed. not only needs, but also like just a need to add more, I think, explosiveness and nastiness to the defense.
Yeah.
And maybe
I agree.
Some of that, Blue, I think, can also come from a schematic shift and a philosophical shift that Coach Heatherman is bringing. But you need certain types of players. You need dogs with a W to make that defense nastier.
Yeah. Well, I agree 100%.
Well, I want to talk about Miami being linked to multiple receivers. In fact, within the next 3-4 days, there's going to be at least 3 who are going to be visiting, including Trebor Pena from Syracuse, who's been grabbing a ton of headlines. A lot of that had to do with what his coach was a little salty, Fran Brown, his former coach, in an interview he did last week. But I want to get Blue's take on the receivers who are coming in. Miami had a few visitors yesterday. We got to talk Jackson Cantwell. We have Larry Blustein, who is one of the most knowledgeable individuals you will see on this or any show, and we're only getting started. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. I love this app. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how wasteful my spending was in a lot of things like food delivery, streaming services. Now I budget so much smarter and I save so much more. And it's really important to collaborate with your partner. I know, my wife and I are trying to stay on the same page with all this stuff, and that's smoother than ever with Monarch Money because you can track your spending on shared and personal accounts. You can set goals, stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I take you around the conference, talking everything transfer portal, NIL, all the magical things we talk about this time of year. But here on Locked On Canes, we have the great Larry Blustein with us. And so, all right, Blue, your take on the trio of receivers that Miami is set to host this week. Trebor Pena is going to take a visit to Coral Gables. Big season in the slot last year for Syracuse. Keelan Marion from BYU, who's also an elite kickoff returner, took 2 back to the house last year. And Tony Johnson, another slot receiver out of Cincinnati, who's been productive. I mean, what do you like about these 3 guys? And are you hoping Miami lands 1 or even 2 of them?
Well, first of all, let's talk about Trebor Pena. And you had said that he's been in the news the last week. Probably not himself, but obviously Fran Brown commenting on the money that he was asking for and said that only one receiver in college is worth that, and that would be JJ from Ohio State. Here's the thing. I'm a big advocate of production. And if anybody kind of has the edge on production is what Trebor Pena brings to the table, especially after last year catching 6 balls for 128 yards against Miami and a touchdown, which to me is a great audition because they could see what he brings to the table. He's got really good size. He's good speed. A New Jersey kid, that was being pursued by Penn State and Rutgers and a lot of schools coming out of high school. But he's had his career kind of started off a little bit slow for the first couple of years. I think he's in his 5th year. I believe with the COVID year as well. But it wasn't until the 23 season that he started showing, hey, listen, this kid, he runs really good routes. He has good hands. But it was last year where he went close to 1,000 yards and came up big with 9 touchdowns for Syracuse, that he established himself as a receiver, who not only, was a really good and productive receiver, but somebody who, if he did go out in the portal, that a lot of people would take a look at him. And he's a difference maker because of the fact that he can get upfield and catch the ball. He's physical, and he's gotten it done against some really good ACC teams. So, and like I said, if you have an 1,000-yard season in the ACC, especially receiving, you're going to get some notice. And I think he definitely would be the type of guy that would come in here and do a great job, especially the need that Miami has at the experience, because let's face it. And I've been probably saying this the last couple of weeks, when you look at Miami's receiving core, a lot of talent, just experience factor. Because if you remember when Jeremiah Smith was the number 1 rated a receiver coming out of high school in the state of Florida, number 2 is Josiah Trader. So, so you have talent in that way. You have Ray, you have a couple of kids that have started to emerge, although they didn't prove it, in games. But that's the only thing separating Miami from being that team offensively and consistent and balance themselves with a good running game is experience at the receiver. And I think somebody like Trebor Pena would bring that to the team.
Yeah, he was 2nd team All ACC last year behind Xavier Restrepo. Pena was. So, yeah, there's obviously some talent there, a lot of talent there, and a lot of production there. I mean, are you the big debate that Miami fans have, and this is not just for a guy like Pena. You could argue about pretty much any player you bring in the transfer portal. Concerned about players who are currently on the roster, maybe feeling like they're getting recruited over. Right. And seeing, okay, well, like a guy like Ray, for example, who, hasn't played a whole lot, but was also playing behind Xavier Restrepo for the last couple of years. Would he be frustrated from adding a guy like Pena? So I usually phrase it this way, Larry, is the juice worth the squeeze here? Because I think it probably is for Pena, because he was electric last year.
Definitely. I mean, if you could upgrade your team in any way, you can't think about feelings. I mean, if these guys who are really, worried about, this guy's going to take my place, then beat his butt out. I mean, if you're good, then you shouldn't have any worries. And you look at it from the perspective of a kid, and sure, his feelings are going to be hurt. But, you look at it as a head coach like Mario Cristobal or Kevin Beard or somebody who works with the wide receivers, or, you're looking at it as an upgrade to what we have, and you can't turn away potential upgrades. Or you'll be that same team. You don't want to do that. You'll be stale. And in Miami's case here, you don't have that much experience. So if you bring in a guy who's been playing for 5 years at this level, yeah, you can't turn the other way, just because you feel. Believe me, that's not a discussion that this coaching staff's having, whether someone's butt's going to be, bothered because they're bringing somebody in. Oh, well, welcome to the real world. It's going to be like that your whole life, whether you're an athlete or whether you're in the working world. Somebody's always going to be challenging you, so you have to rise to the occasion.
That is 1,000% true. I mean, no matter what walk of life you're in, there's always somebody.
You can't keep running.
There's always somebody that's trying to take your spot.
No doubt.
What about the other two receivers that Miami, as we know, is going to be hosting this week? Keelan Marion out of BYU took 2 kick returns to the house last year for the Cougars. Tony Johnson from Cincinnati. What do you like about these guys?
Well, Keelan's he's an elusive guy, and if you watch, word to any guy who's a 4-3 guy who all of a sudden you put back there, just think they're going to be a kick returner. Doesn't always happen. You have to have a knack for it. You have to learn how to read wedges. You have to learn how to read your blocks in front of you. And somebody like Keelan does. And you watch him, and he's just always moving forward. And that's the way he is as a receiver as well. He's always advancing the ball. His body lean is always forward. He's got good hands. He runs really good patterns. He's got the experience factor, so to me, you get a guy like that. And I think that he has an opportunity to be pretty special in anything. If you need him to run kick back, which Miami's, right now, they've got a couple of guys in mind, but still, when you have somebody's established like that, you got to give them an opportunity. Tony Johnson's, he's played at a pretty decent level as well. He's a guy that, he entered the portal, from Cincinnati. And this is a kid, obviously last year he had 45, 46, something like that receptions. He had 6 touchdowns. I really like him. He's a tough kid. He's not real huge. He's about 5'10" or so. But the thing that you like about him is he's sure-handed. He runs really good patterns. He's going to be he's going to get open. To me, somebody like that. And I talked to a couple of people, associated with Cincinnati, and that's their feedback is the fact that, this kid could play. No matter where you're going to put him. And let's face it, Cincinnati didn't exactly play a terrible schedule. So,
nope.
So he had an opportunity to show what he could do. He did it the year before. Quality type of player, good teammate to have on the team. So everything you got to take in consideration. So if you're going to say, well, he's going to be a great teammate, someone's going to, I don't care. Can he catch the ball? Can he get a touchdown? Can he make the good catches? And, you're losing a lot of receptions from last year. So you have to make that up some way. And it's probably you're more apt to do it with experienced receivers rather than, kids that are going to get it done for the first time. If they've been there, done that, like a Pena or like him, you're already on the right foot, and then everything that they do after that is going to be a plus. And anything that some of your first year guys or, first year exposure guys like Josiah Trader, who, I said this the other night on our Monday night show that you get, people are saying, well, this guy might not be ready, but all of a sudden against Notre Dame, Josiah Trader could catch 5 balls for 119 yards and it's over. Then there's no more questions. So that's how crazy this game is, where, you have all these questions, but then all of a sudden you thrust a freshman quarterback or a sophomore quarterback in there and they're 22 of 31 for 310 yards and 3 touchdowns. And you go, okay, let's move on to the next question. These guys are here for a reason. They were recruited for a reason. It's because they got it done. Okay. So it's not, some of them get it real early. Some of them may never get it, but if they do get it, and somebody's, you take a look at a kid who had a awesome spring game, and he's had an awesome camp, and he's only really supposed to be a junior in high school. Here's a guy who comes to Miami out of American heritage, and Are they all going to be able to strike gold like that? Probably not. But that's what I'm saying. So at least with some of those established kids, they've done it before. So
Right.
anything in that realm, I think that you need to get experience. And because they could have an influence on the younger kids too. That may change their game. You never know. I mean, you could be looking at Pena and he could be talking, to one of the younger receivers and say, oh, when you go inside, you have to do this or that. Then he tries it. I've seen it happen with guys like Jason Taylor at the high school level with Nick Benito, or he teaches him one move and then all of a sudden he does it. He has 2 sacks and he's on the, so being technically sound at any position in football makes you a better player. So whatever you could learn, and I think these more veteran guys, even though they're going to bring productivity, they're going to bring experience too, which could help.
I go back to, a year ago, what Mark Fletcher said about Damian Martinez, because when Miami added Martinez, and it was a year ago at this time, spring transfer portal window, a lot of people's reactions were, oh no, is this going to scare Mark Fletcher away? Is he going to want to leave if they're bringing in Martinez? Fletcher came out and he said, I love this. I want to learn from this guy. Like, I watched him at Oregon State. I mean, Fletcher, he's not stupid. He knew he was going to get his. He got plenty of carries last year. We'll probably get even more carries this year. And he got to play behind and learn from a senior, technically a junior, but a guy with a lot of experience like Damian Martinez. Right. So, yeah, I mean, to be able to embrace that mentality, Blue, is big.
In a Martinez's case, too, remember, it took him a couple of games to get going.
Yeah.
I mean, he and we heard all the, the fans and, oh, what a waste. And I told you, Oregon State's nothing. But by game 5 and 6, he started picking it up. And by the end of the year, he was undoubtedly one of the most impressive running backs, that we anywhere. Really, Ashton Genty, all those guys like that. But Martinez was strong. He showed he could be a pro. And this is a guy that will go into the NFL and be in the NFL for a while. And that's what you were saying. That's what Mark Fletcher learned from a guy who had shown the 2 previous years that once he gets a grasp of the offense, he's a beast. And he was. Yeah. And you're 100%. That's part of this entire thing. Yeah, it's great to have the productivity, but it's also great to have somebody who is a teammate and somebody who's on the bench. And all of a sudden, when Mark Fletcher comes back, after a series and Martinez says to him, he goes, where that one play you could have blocked to this side and maybe, help and, on that blitz, different things. So that's part of the team. And you mentioned that this is a team. This is a team of, I don't know, 103 guys now. But, I mean, this is a team that you have to be, everybody needs to be a part of it. That's why I say, well, this guy's not ready. Well, if he's wearing a uniform and you need him, he's going to be ready. So, yeah, I agree. There's so many facets of bringing in players. And if you're going to be insecure about it, then you better strap things up because that's the way life is.
I love it. Well, coming up next, we are exactly a week away from Jackson Cantwell's decision. Miami has hosted him plenty of times unofficially. He has taken an official visit to Oregon this week, so we have to wonder, has Miami already put their best foot forward in the recruitment of the top player in the class of 2026? You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on Locked On Canes. We're joined by Larry Blustein, host on 560 WQAM, does great work with Prep Red Zone Florida and the Sixth Ring Cane on 5 Reasons Sports Network. Blue is all over the place, scouting players, helping players promote themselves, doing such amazing work. And, I guess a player who doesn't need too much help in promoting himself is Jackson Cantwell, nation's top recruit, Nixa, Missouri, 5-star offensive tackle. And Blue, I've heard nothing but positive things about the work Miami has done in his recruitment. And, there's been a lot of buzz the last couple of weeks about Miami potentially being the favorite. But as we see when it comes to recruiting, especially 5 stars, this stuff can change. And the Oregon Ducks seemingly have the luxury of giving him the final impression. Like, Miami's made a great impression at this point, but Oregon's going to be hosting Cantwell this weekend. Blue, look, what does your gut tell you about Jackson Cantwell's decision, which is coming down April 30th?
I'm going to give you a couple names, okay? Tyler Bowen, all right? Stacey Searles, Grant Newsom, Alex Mirabal. And this week, former Hialeah High School offensive lineman, Alex Terry. Those are all offensive line coaches at the places that you would think that Michigan, Ohio State, places where he's in play right now. Alex Terry is a guy who I've known since he was 8, and he's going to be one of the big factors this weekend when he goes to Oregon, being an offensive line coach, understanding the game, having been around some pretty decent people over the last couple of years. But to me, the common denominator out of all the 5 names that I mentioned is there's not one head coach who is an offensive line-oriented coach other than Mario Cristobal. And I think that's where Miami has the edge. The relationship was not just with Mirabal, but it was also with your head football coach. Because if you go to where Grant Lanning is, or where you go to one of those other coaches, or Ryan Day, they're not offensive line-oriented. There's just a special breed of person that plays that offensive line, and only an offensive lineman would relate to that person. I think Miami's had the advantage over the last 3 weeks. I really do. His visit was great. I think he's at the point now that he's going to go to Oregon. He's going to be swayed with 1,000 uniforms and all this stuff like that, but that's not going to matter. What's going to matter is year-round. In Missouri, you're going to have 20 and 10-degree weather. Here, you're going to be able to work out year-round. He's going to be able to be in a situation where Miami is undoubtedly one of the top 5 offensive lines in the country right now, and growing and adding players like Buchanan and Campbell and guys like and Wilkerson and guys like that they've added. And you have players that, remember, he's the number 1 player in the country. But so is Mawanoa when he came out. So he has something of a relationship. And I'm sure when he comes, and he came, that he talked to him and said, listen, you are the number 1 player. How are you doing here? What kind of, are they pushing you to the point where they're going to get you ready for the next level? And the answer is, a year from now, we're talking a top 10 to 15 pick for Mawanoa in the NFL draft. Samson Okunlola, same thing, type of guy. Talk to some of the guys like Bell. Here's Bell a year ago, who was a work in progress. But right now, he's got an opportunity to work himself into a top 2-3 round of a draft next year as well. So I think the proof is in the pudding. I think somebody in Jackson's, he reminds me, I don't know, there's maybe a lot of people listen, but I think it was like 15 years ago. The number 1 player in the country was an offensive lineman out of California, out of Denver, Colorado, and he ended up going to USC. He was the number 1 player. Another example is Chantrell Henderson, who came out of Minnesota and was a number 1 offensive lineman in the country, came here. Okay, didn't have a banner time, but he then went on to the NFL and played 6 seasons. So I think the very fact that Miami has that lineage, and they have it now, all you have to do is name drop Penei Sewell as a perfect guy. I think that's, like I have a friend who coached Emmett Smith in high school. So every time he talks, and he'll say, well, I had Emmett, and all right, you already got my attention.
Yeah.
So to go around the way that I have. My thing is, I thought from the beginning that he's going to be a Miami Hurricane. I just think that everything favors, him to come here. And it's not going to be one last weekend in Eugene, Oregon that's going to make a difference. I think his mind is fairly made up. He's going to go out there. They're going to listen. If they didn't roll out the red carpet and give him 100% treatment, I'd be disappointed. Then, they're going to tell him everything he wants. Financially, they'll say, we can do this for you. You know what, Alex? I still think he ends up here.
I love it. I love it. And Larry Blustein, you could hear the information that is just swirling in this man's brain. He's got the most informative radio show in the country, South Florida High School Sports Show on 560 WQAM. What do you have coming up, Blue, on your next episode?
Yeah, well, we just got done with some really, really good stuff this last week. Actually, we kind of we've kind of tossed it to a lot of different sports. We had the number 8 baseball team in the country, Douglas High School, who've won 143 games and lost 8 over the last 5-6 years, and put a bunch of guys into major leagues, like the kid Luzardo, who pitched for the Marlins, who's pitching for the Phillies. Yeah, we had that. But this coming week, we're gonna start getting into our college coaches. Mario Cristobal will be coming on over the next couple of weeks with us. We're kind of dancing around the Panthers and the Heat right now, but that's a good thing for them. They're doing real well. But when we get settled, pretty much the month of June and July, every Monday night, 6 to 8 on WQAM. We'll always have some pretty good stuff for you, and we're excited about it. Recruiting is at a peak. We start spring football next Monday, and we have a huge end of the spring 7-on-7 this weekend in Dade Broward County, where 36 schools, including defending state champions Chaminade, West Boca, there are going to be a ton for a 7-on-7 tournament, and we're excited. So it's a lot going on. Appreciate it, and this is everybody says the off season is slow, but spend a month with me, and we'll see how slow it is.
1,000%. Great stuff as always by Larry Blustein. Make sure you follow him on X at Prep Red Zone FL. Follow us at Locked On Canes. Thank you so much for making us your first listen and your first watch today. And make sure for your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Drafts podcast with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level, like our guy Cam Ward, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And we'll talk to you guys next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.